Nobody in that wedding hall expected one quiet man to change everything that night. There were 200 people in that room. Flowers on every table. A live band playing soft music. Champagne glasses clinking. It looked like the happiest place on earth. But for one woman sitting alone at the corner table, it felt like the loneliest place she had ever been in her life. And what happened next, nobody saw coming. Her name was Claire, 34 years old. Brown hair, she always kept in a neat bun. Warm green eyes that smiled even when she was trying not to. She worked as a kindergarten teacher in a small town in Ohio. And she was the kind of person who remembered every single one of her students. Birthdays. She was kind. She was real. And she had been fighting her weight her entire life. Claire had been overweight since she was a teenager. She had tried every diet you can think of. She had cried in dressing rooms more times than she could count. She had canceled plans because she was scared of what people would think when they saw her. But she had never, not once, let that stop her from showing up for the people she loved. So when her college best friend, Jessica, invited her to be a guest at her wedding, Claire said yes without even thinking twice. She bought a new dress, navy blue. She felt good in it. She did her makeup herself, spent almost an hour on it. She drove 3 hours to get to the venue. And she walked in with her head held high, because Jessica was getting married, and Claire was going to be there for it no matter what. She found her assigned seat, table 9, near the back, close to the kitchen doors. She sat down, smoothed her dress, and looked around the room with a smile. That's when it started. A group of women were sitting 2 tables away. They were all dressed in expensive outfits. Hair done at a salon. Nails perfect. They were the kind of women who made you feel like you needed to apologize for existing. One of them, a tall blonde named Heather, looked over at Claire, leaned toward her friend, and whispered something. And then they laughed. Not a small laugh. A real, loud, look at this person laugh. Claire felt her face go hot. She looked down at her plate, pretended she hadn't noticed, told herself it wasn't about her. Maybe they were laughing at something else. Maybe she was being too sensitive. But then it happened again. Heather said something that included the words, "How did she even fit in that chair?" And the whole group burst out laughing again. And this time, a few people at nearby tables turned to look. Some of them smiled. One man actually shook his head like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all evening. Claire felt something break inside her chest. She had felt this feeling before. That slow, sinking weight of being laughed at just for existing. Just for being in a body that people had decided was not acceptable. She had felt it in school. She had felt it at her cousin's birthday party years ago. She had felt it online, in comment sections, in the way some doctors looked at her before she even opened her mouth. But feeling it here, at a wedding, dressed up, having done nothing wrong, this one hurt differently. She picked up her phone, opened her messages, started typing a text to Jessica, telling her she wasn't feeling well and needed to leave early. Her hands were shaking a little. She was not going to cry. She refused to cry in that room and give them the satisfaction. She had just finished typing the message when she heard a voice beside her. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" She looked up. Standing next to her was a man she had never seen before. Tall, maybe 38. Dark hair, a little messy like he had forgotten to fix it. He was wearing a navy blue suit that was just slightly wrinkled, like he had ironed it in a hurry. And next to him, holding his hand, was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 6. Red dress. 2 pigtails with little white ribbons. The biggest brown eyes Claire had ever seen on a child. "We got a little lost," the man said, looking at the table number and then at his phone. "I think this is our table." "Of course," Claire said, clearing her throat. "Please sit down." The man, his name was Daniel. She would learn, pulled out the chair for his daughter first. The little girl climbed up, looked around the room with wide, curious eyes, and then looked directly at Claire. "I like your dress," the little girl said. "It's the same color as mine almost." Claire looked down at her navy dress, then at the little girl's red one. She smiled for the first time since she had walked in. "You're right," she said. "We almost match." The little girl grinned like this was the best news she had ever received. Daniel sat down, noticed the look on Claire's face, that tight, trying to hold it together look, and didn't say anything for a moment. He just poured himself some water, poured some for his daughter, and then looked at Claire and said quietly, "You okay?" Just like that. No drama. No preamble. Just, "Are you okay?" Claire almost lost it right there. Because sometimes the simplest question, asked at the right moment, by the right person, hits you somewhere deep and unexpected. I'm fine, she said automatically. He nodded, didn't push, but he also didn't look away like most people would have. He just sat there, calm and steady, like he had all the time in the world. His daughter's name was Lily. She was, without question, the most talkative 6-year-old Claire had ever encountered in her entire career as a kindergarten teacher. Within 10 minutes, Lily had told Claire her favorite color, purple, but also sometimes blue, her favorite animal, horses, but she had never actually touched one. And the fact that her dad burned toast every single morning without exception. Daniel looked mildly embarrassed by that last one. It's true, Lily said seriously. Every day, the smoke thing goes off. The smoke detector, Daniel clarified. That's what I said. Claire laughed. A real laugh. One she hadn't expected. And that was when Heather and her group, still at their table 2 rows over, noticed the interaction. One of them said something. They looked over. And then Heather, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, said something about how some people would do anything to get attention. At someone else's wedding. The laughter came again. Daniel stopped. He turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked at the group. Not with anger, exactly, but with the kind of look that made it very clear he had heard exactly what was said, and he had no intention of pretending otherwise. He stood up. Claire grabbed his arm. Don't, she whispered. Please. It's not worth it. He looked at her for a second. Then he did something she absolutely did not expect. He sat back down, turned his chair slightly, so he was facing her directly. His back now partially turned to that group. And in a voice that was completely normal, not lowered, not whispered, just normal conversational volume, he said, I want to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. Claire blinked. What? My wife passed away 2 years ago, Daniel said. Lily was 4. And after she died, I spent a really long time thinking about all the things that actually matter. You know, the real list. Not the one the world gives you. He glanced at Lily, who was busy arranging the flower centerpiece to her liking. And I'll tell you what I figured out. The people who laugh at someone in a room full of strangers, just because of how they look, those people are not okay. That's not confidence. That's not fun. That is someone who is incredibly, painfully insecure, using someone else's moment of discomfort to feel bigger than they are. Claire was completely still. You drove here, he said. You got dressed up. You showed up for your friend. You sat down and you were kind to a stranger and his kid within 30 seconds of meeting them. You know what that is? That's someone with actual character. Lily looked up from the flowers. Daddy says character is the thing people see when nobody's watching. I do say that, Daniel confirmed. Claire looked at this man, this total stranger, with his wrinkled suit and his precocious daughter, and felt the tears she had been holding back the entire evening finally pushed through. Not sad tears, not humiliated tears, something else entirely. What happened next was something that Claire would describe later, to Jessica, to her sister, to anyone who would listen, as one of the most unexpectedly dignified moments of her entire life. Daniel stood up again, but this time he reached out his hand to Claire. My daughter has been asking me to dance with her all night, and I keep telling her I don't know any of the songs. Will you come with us and help us both embarrass ourselves on that dance floor? Lily immediately jumped off her chair. Yes. She said yes, right? She said yes. I haven't said anything yet, Claire said, laughing through watery eyes. Please, Lily said, grabbing Claire's hand with both of hers. We really need help. Daddy dances like the robot from that movie. Which movie? I don't know. The boring one. Daniel looked genuinely offended. The Terminator is not boring. The 3 of them walked to the dance floor together, and the whole room watched. Not with laughter this time. With something quieter. Something that made a few people shift in their seats. Something that made Heather, at her table, look down at her champagne glass and find it suddenly very interesting. They danced for 3 songs. Lily danced like she was trying to become the floor. Daniel was, in fact, a terrible dancer. Claire held Lily's hands and spun her around and forgot, for a little while, that she had been crying 20 minutes ago. Jessica found them on the dance floor during the 4th song. She grabbed Claire's face in both hands and said, I saw what happened and I am so sorry. And also, who is this man and why? Does his daughter have better dance moves than my entire wedding party? Lily bowed. After the dancing, Claire and Daniel sat back down. They talked through the rest of the dinner. He told her about losing his wife to a sudden cardiac event. No warning, no goodbye. He told her about the months after, when Lily would ask every morning if mommy was coming back. He told her how he had learned to braid hair from YouTube tutorials because Lily refused to leave the house without pigtails. Claire told him about teaching kindergarten, about the little boy in her class last year who cried every Monday because he missed his grandmother, about the girl who had just learned to read and screamed so loud with excitement that the principal came to check on them. They talked like people who had known each other longer than one evening. When the night started winding down, Lily had fallen asleep across two chairs with her head on Daniel's jacket. Daniel was writing something on a napkin. He handed it to Claire. A phone number. And underneath it, for words, Lily wants a rematch. Claire looked at him. She means the dancing, he said. Obviously, Claire said. She drove home that night, with the napkin in her purse and the windows down even though it was cold outside. She didn't cry on the drive home, not even a little. She thought about Heather and her group. She thought about how much space she had given people like that throughout her life. How many events she had left early. How many mirrors she had avoided. How many mornings she had stood in front of her closet feeling like none of it would ever be enough. And then she thought about a 6-year-old girl in a red dress who looked at a stranger and said, "I like your dress." No calculation, no agenda, just, "I see something good, and I'm going to say it out loud." Somewhere between Ohio and the county line, Claire made a quiet decision. She wasn't going to shrink anymore. Not for rooms full of people who didn't know her. Not for women who laughed at strangers to feel better about themselves. Not for anyone. She was the woman who showed up, who remembered birthdays, who held little hands on dance floors and made children feel safe. That was worth something. That was worth everything. She texted Daniel the next morning. "Lily can have her rematch. But I'm warning you, I take dancing very seriously." He replied 3 minutes later. "She's already been practicing. You're in trouble." And then, a second later, "So am I, honestly." Claire smiled at her phone for a long time. Some people walk into your life at a wedding, at the wrong table, on a hard night, and they change the whole temperature of the room just by sitting down next to you, by seeing you when everyone else was looking without really seeing anything at all. Daniel didn't fix anything that night. He didn't confront anyone dramatically. He didn't make a speech. He just chose to sit down, face his chair toward the person who needed it, and say, "I see you. And what I see is worth something." That's it. That's the whole thing. 200 people were in that hall. One man made a choice that cost him nothing, except 30 seconds of deciding who he wanted to be. Think about how often you have that same choice in front of you.